This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's going. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we've got for you today. Reaction to Rondo's suspension, questions facing the Bulls with Rose and also their head coach. Both those topics and more with TNT's Kenny Smith. A special visit with John Gruden on today's game, stories from his past, and of course, Gruden's Grooves.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
On the menu this morning, Rondo sits on his way out of town. Rose may return sooner than expected, and Big Papi is angry about the good ideas the people who run his sport have. We'll get to all of those, but it is not often that we begin Mike and Mike with a name you probably don't know. But this morning, this kid played his way directly into our leadoff spot, and his name is Xavier Rattan-Mays. And I love the story. Now, this is in a losing effort last night for Florida State. But Florida State is playing Miami last night, college basketball. There's about 5 minutes left in the game. There's a timeout. Florida State is down 18 points. And Xavier Rattan-Mays, Rattan-Mays, says that his teammate, Monte Brandon, told him, "We need you."
Yeah.
We need
the freshman, by the way.
Xavier is the team's leading scorer for Florida State. Most people probably don't follow Florida State basketball very closely. Well, here's what happened. In the final 4 minutes and 38 seconds of an eventual 81-77 loss, Rattan-Mays wound up scoring, over that stretch, 38 points. He would score 30 of the Seminoles' final 33, and he would score 26 in one stretch, either scoring or assisting on the Seminoles' final 38 points. So I misspoke. He did not score 38 points in that stretch. He scored 30
points
in the final 438. 30 of the team's final 38, but he scored or assisted on all 38 of those points, including 26 points in a row in 4.5 minutes.
I have to believe that's what you can call getting in the zone. You know, in my sport, especially in my position at defensive line, there's not a whole lot of getting in the zone. You know, you feel good when things might be working a little better, but you know, be it baseball or be it like basketball, especially basketball and shooting, that's getting in a zone. I haven't seen many situations where you're in that much of a zone. Still in a losing effort, but still, I mean, 18 down under 5 minutes to go, you're thinking this game is completely over, and here this kid is trying to bring him back as hot as anyone has ever been.
Well, I mean, to give you some perspective, he scored 30 points in the last 4.5 minutes last night. In another ACC game, Wake Forest scored a total of 34 points.
Yeah, they got beat by Virginia 70-34.
This kid scored 30 in a 4.5 minute stretch. So that's a remarkable performance by the young man. And again, worthy of a moment or two at the lead of our show, despite a loss in a game that I'm guessing most people were not planning to watch.
Well, I mean, listen, Florida State, they're 15-14, 7-9 in the ACC.
Miami's trying to play their way into the tournament. That's Miami a big win for Miami.
Yeah, Miami 18-10 at this point. They are trying to play their win. But what is this kid now? I mean, what do you do? How do you top that? What do you do?
Well, he himself said, he said he scored 55 points in a high school game once. And he himself said, I've never seen anyone quite that hot since Clay Thompson and Golden State scored 37 in one quarter. So we've seen that this year, and now we see a college kid go off last night. Good for him. A remarkable performance and worthy of a moment to lead the show. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. So that's on one side. On the other side, Rajon Rondo suspended for last night's game between the Mavericks and the Hawks in Atlanta, a game that had a lot of weirdness about it in a variety of ways. Now, you and I have been in Atlanta for an ice storm.
Yes, we have.
They don't handle weather well down there.
No, they do not. We were there for the Super Bowl years ago, and so we were there for the week, and it was a week of an ice storm, and I'm sure the way it affected you the most is there was no service in the hotel.
They just gave up.
Yeah,
the city just gave up.
They did. Listen, we've been involved in a couple of places where they don't react well. You know, Atlanta and then in Dallas for the Super Bowl as well, where they just kind of, they didn't. Oh my God, what's happening? We're going to shut down.
They had never had weather like that in their lives in Dallas, and they'd never had weather like this in Atlanta. So yesterday, through the middle of the afternoon, the players for the Hawks and the Mavericks thought the game was going to be postponed. One player, I was reading a story, said that he was in the grocery store shopping, and all of a sudden he gets a text on his phone, the game is on.
Yeah.
So they had to race to the arena and play a game last night, and they did, and the Hawks wound up winning. And I have some interesting numbers on the Hawks. For those of you who are doubting the Hawks' ability to win a championship this year, I have numbers that are going to fly directly in the face of that. But the headline here is that Rondo was suspended for the game, and now we learn, after yesterday's show, we learned that not only did he have the run-in with Carlisle on the floor during the game, but apparently they had a heated argument after the game as well.
Well, again, that's not shocking. Here's the deal. Now, you might think there's a little, blow-off of steam time as he's sitting on the bench, because remember, he didn't play the rest of the game when he got benched. So, you're hot, you're emotional at that point. You're told to sit down. You figure things may cool down, but what happens is, while you may cool down, what you haven't done at that point during the game is resolved the situation, because it's not like during the rest of the game, Rick Carlisle is going over and they're trying to work things out during the game. That's not the time for it. The time is after the game. So after the game, what they're going to do is relive the moment. They're not reliving the moment on the court. It's just we're going to yell at one another, sit down, basically you're done for the game. After the game, we're going to relive the moment and try and work through the moment. And Carlisle, is saying all the right things. It's got to be about communication for both of us. We have to get better at it and such. But that doesn't surprise me.
Well, there's one thing in that quote that jumped out at me. You tell me if there were just the very end of that quote jumped out at you. The quote you're referring to, Carlisle said, the incident last night was born in large part from poor communication between him and I. Good. That's on both of us. Good.
Right.
We had a long talk about the situation today, and we both agreed we need to communicate more frequently. Good. And then here's where it got interesting. And we need to work on the solution of making his stint as a Dallas Maverick the most successful one possible. His stint as a Dallas Maverick.
Enjoy the rest of this season.
That's my point. There's the coach basically said, look, there's no way in the world he's coming back here next year, which we were all speculating on yesterday, but could you say it any more clearly than Carlisle is saying?
And let me read the first line again about the communication.
The incident last night was born in large part from poor communication between him and I.
Yeah, and what that translation? I told him what to do and he didn't listen. That's the translation. That's the communication problem. I told him what to do, and he didn't want to listen to me telling him what to do. That was the communication problem they had. But I'm with you. You're right. Saying his stint here, because his stint is going to be over. I don't think in this league where players can win their battles with coaches, he's not going to win this battle, and he's not going to be a part of this team next year.
Tim McMahon covers the Mavericks for us on ESPNDallas.com.
He knew this was something that was going to blow up. Now, what was Carlisle's motivation there? I couldn't tell you that. Was he trying to send a message to his team that he won't stand for disrespect? Perhaps did he feel like at this point, after this friction and an issue had been brewing for a while, that it was time to really bring it to a head? That could be the case as well, but there's no question in my mind that Rick Carlisle clearly understood the ramifications when he called the timeout, stormed on the court, and screamed at Rajon Rondo.
Well, listen, what else had we heard about this? That they were butting heads and maybe something like this was coming. And if you watch it, clearly this is not, he wasn't bringing the ball up on the side of the bench where they were right next to one another. It was on the other side. So who else is hearing all of this, Greeny?
Everyone on the floor.
Everybody on the team, more importantly. And Rick Carlisle is a tough coach, and he calls the plays. So now here you are where the situation already, we heard, is kind of brewing and boiling, and here he is wide open. He's yelling across the floor, and Rondo is clearly not listening to him. Everybody's hearing that, whether you're sitting on the bench or a player on the floor. So Rick Carlisle is taking the reins of the team. He's one of the coaches that is going to control the players and take the reins of the team. I have zero problem with him doing it. If you want to say he was sending a message, you know what he was doing? He was being the coach of the team. I run this team. This is the way I do business. You're not in line with that. We're going to butt heads. Okay, sit down.
Here's what I have to admit I don't know, and I'd be curious to ask. Guys, let's try and get we can ask Bill Wennington this morning or even Kyle Lowry and Kenny Smith. We have great guests this morning. Again, in addition to Gruden, Bill Wennington in Chicago this morning, 10 after 8 Eastern, 10 after 7 in Chicago, with his thoughts on Derrick Rose and everything else. Kyle Lowry, and quickly we'll tell you, we're going to do a Twitter view with Kyle Lowry. This is a new feature we're doing with Mike and Mike, and we're going to take you're going to interview Kyle Lowry. We'll ask him a question or two, but basically it's your interview, so we're taking your Twitter questions for Kyle Lowry all morning long, starting right now. Use the hashtag questions for Kyle. Kyle, and you'll interview him, and he's a point guard, so we can ask him, and then we'll ask the Jet, Kenny Smith, later this morning. Again, all our guests on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Here's my question. when you have a top-flight point guard, if you have Chris Paul, if you have Rajon Rondo, who, while he's not a great scorer, is a top-level point guard, facilitator of the offense. How frequent is it in the NBA that the coaches are calling almost all of the plays? I mean, because we read yesterday that Rick Carlisle got into these problems with Jason Kidd. You have a Hall of Fame point guard who's accustomed to sort of running the offense, running the show out there. I think it's not like football where they're, calling plays into the headsets. I've always been under the impression that during the general flow of the game, obviously coming out of timeouts and stuff like that, you'll see them drawing up a play, but that largely the point guard is running and facilitating the offense, and the coach is not calling a play all of the time or most of the time the way Carlisle does. I could be wrong. I'd like to find that out.
Listen, it's like in baseball. You see sometimes the catcher giving the signals, and other times what's he doing? He's looking over to the dugout and getting the signals from the manager or whoever would be doing. A lot of times the manager, pitching coach, whoever's doing it, to give the signals to the pitcher. So I guess my answer to that is it varies by team.
My point is that Rondo played for Doc, all those years in Boston, whatever it is. I wonder, and Doc was a point guard.
Right.
So I wonder if Rondo is just not accustomed to having someone calling the plays for him all the time. And his response might be, listen, man, this is why you brought me here. I'm a point guard. I facilitate the offense. I'm the quarterback of this team. Let me do my thing. I'm not saying he's right, but I'm saying that could be the mentality.
Oh, it absolutely could be the mentality, but that's something that has to get worked out.
Right.
When you hear it's brewing, that means the situation, A, hasn't been addressed, or B, has been addressed but has not been settled. That's something you need to settle. That's a pretty big thing. This is the guy that's going to have the ball most of the time. He's used to maybe calling the plays. You have a head coach who's used to calling the plays. That's something you may want to figure out.
We had Chris Webber live yesterday here on Mike and Mike, of course, from TNT, and asked him, do you think Rondo will be back in Dallas next year?
I would not think so. I don't want to make that little thing bigger than it is, but on this team, Dallas doesn't need that type of player. Dallas doesn't need Chris Paul. Chris Paul and Rondo probably dribble the ball more than anybody in the NBA. They're true traditional point guards, and so they have to hand it off to you to shoot it, and they have to give it to you to shoot. Well, Dallas, they move it, and so I could see him going to a team that needs his skill set, because I don't think Dallas necessarily needs his skill set, because they have guys that can do it all.
We had heard that coming in, though, didn't we? I mean, when Rondo first went there, good player going there, but is that the type of player that team needs? And I think there was question anyway on whether what the longevity was going to be with him in Dallas, and I think that's pretty much been answered.
Hawks, meanwhile, win the game last night against the Rondo-less Mavericks, turning a 6-point halftime deficit into a 17-point win. And for those people who are counting out or dismissing or selling short, whatever phrase you want to use, the Atlanta Hawks, I have a number that I will share with you that suggests to me that not only can they win the East, but that this team absolutely should be considered the favorite to win the championship.
Okay, all right.
So everyone in the world is selling short the Hawks, right? And we get it. Since LeBron came back, the Cavaliers are the best team in basketball. By the way, Cavs Warriors tonight.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people will say could be a preview of the NBA Finals. And over the last month, I've got a number on that one as well. Why don't I give you that? Since LeBron came back, January 13th, the Cavs are 17-3. And over that stretch of time, that's the best record in the NBA. They have the most points per 100 possessions in the NBA, and they have the best efficiency in the NBA since he's come back. The Warriors are second in all of those categories.
Right.
So Golden State-Cleveland is a magnificent matchup. But let's talk about Atlanta for a second. Do you know what Atlanta's record? People talk about, well, Atlanta, they have the best record in basketball. They're 45-12, or the second best record in basketball. They've been playing great. But, they're doing it by beating up on the weak Eastern Conference. By beating Dallas last night, do you know what their record is against the West?
I'm going to say just the way you're saying this is pretty darn good.
Atlanta against the West this year is 16-4. And against the top 9 teams in the West, so, those top 9 teams that are battling it out for 8 spots in the Western Conference, they are 11-3. They haven't played Phoenix this year, so the one they haven't played is Phoenix. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you rule out, Memphis or Golden State. They've played basically all of the West Conference big boys, and they've beaten them soundly. They're 16-4 against the West, 11-3 against the good teams in the West. They're 21-8 this year against teams with winning records. They're 45-12 overall. I mean, the notion that people are just, Atlanta, they're not going to be there in the playoffs and all that kind of stuff, I think that's selling them dramatically short. They're having too good a season, and they're proving it against good teams on a night-in, night-out basis.
Listen, playing the style and being called the San Antonio of the East, and that's what they look like, and they do it well with incredible athletes doing it, and that's a great stat and all about what they've done against the West. So If they get to the finals, you can't sell them short. Now I'll ask you this. Now you're sitting in Vegas, and you have to bet an amount of money that really is going to cramp your style.
Yeah.
Who are you betting on?
I would bet on Cleveland right now.
Yeah.
But, you know,
listen, I don't think people are discounting Atlanta as much as you think, as now saying the Cavs are now more what we thought they were. That's what I think it is. And in saying that, when you say it, we're saying the third team now, the team that's 9.5 games away from Atlanta, is now the team to beat in the East. That in and of itself sounds like disrespecting the top team in the East in Atlanta. But I think it's more to the Cavs that they're kind of clicking now and looking like the best team in the East than it is to, well, Atlanta is just not very good. And Atlanta's an excellent team. An excellent team. And I agree with you. If they make it through the East, I think they could have an excellent shot to win with the style they play. But at this point, to me, and I think a lot of other people, the Cavs are a better team.
I feel like all year long people have been trying to find ways to discount Atlanta.
Well,
it was Cleveland before Cleveland was playing well. It was Chicago. Oh, my goodness, look at Washington and what they've put together. People have talked about everybody but the Hawks. And I'm raising my hand. I'm fully guilty of this myself. But when you look at the numbers don't lie. And I'm not trying to get all analytics on you here. I'm just talking about wins and losses. They play good teams, they win.
The one thing that I'll say is we're really not used to seeing Atlanta in this position. So you know how it is? You don't really maybe buy into it until you see it consistently. So you wonder, okay, wow, here they are. We saw last year, like them and Washington and Toronto. Oh, look at what these teams are doing. And Atlanta is just taking the NBA by storm this year. But you know what? We're not used to seeing that. So I think the buy-in takes a little longer.
The other headline story coming out of the NBA yesterday, of course, is the Bulls hopeful that Derrick Rose can still return this season. He's scheduled to have surgery in the next day or two. Now, if you were listening yesterday, right around this time, right at the beginning of the show, we played you our Dr. Mark Addix. And he gave what we described as a very optimistic potential diagnosis of the Rose thing. Basically, he said they'll go in arthroscopically, and I'm paraphrasing now because I don't want to play the whole 45-second explanation, but it was they'll look at the meniscus, and if it's less than 50% gone, then there's a good, which he says there's a good chance of, then there's a chance that he could come back and play again this year. So we'll see.
Here's one of the differences. You're going in and you're not suturing anything. You're taking out. When you hear meniscus repair, a lot of times that's actually taking the torn part and frayed part out. So you can get it sutured. It all depends on the tear, but he's done this a second time, so the doctor is kind of predicting that it's going to be more frayed in there, so you're going to be taking it out. And the possibility of him coming back is a real possibility. How real? We'll just have to wait and see.
Here's his coach, Tibbs.
As you can imagine, it's not an easy thing because of, how everyone feels about him, and who he is. So, but our reality is that the games are going to keep coming, and we've been through it before, and our team, the thing that I think makes them special is how they care about each other. So we'll have a spirit about us that we're going to have to fight through things, and but overall, our concern is with Derrick.
I remember tweeting during their series against Miami when they were just so undermanned and they fought so hard.
Yeah.
That was a hard-fought 5-game series. I remember tweeting at the time, one of these days, Tom Thibodeau is going to have the best team, or he's going to have the full team, and he's going to win a championship. And, this could have been that year. And I guess it's not theoretically impossible, but it'll still be that year.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good.
No, it feels like that has sailed a bit. It really does. But you're right. It's a team that, even without him, you can't wait to watch play in the playoffs because you'll love how hard they play.
Meanwhile, just because Derrick Rose isn't going anywhere, he has $41 million coming to him in the next 2 years, it doesn't mean that the most sought-after free agent in the sport won't be coming from Chicago this summer. We'll explain exactly what we mean by that next. Plus, I want to know just how dedicated to your sport you were.
Okay.
You love football, right?
Absolutely.
You loved being a football player.
Yes, I did.
You would have given anything to be a football player.
Absolutely.
Let's find out just how dedicated to that you really were.
Okay.
The Real Sheed tweets us, what indication has D. Rose ever given the world he would rush back for the playoffs anyway? I mean, you're going to get that.
Yeah, you are.
You're going to get that.
Yes,
and I'm not surprised.
You are going to get it. The different. I'll be interested to see the difference difference because he was certainly out longer the last time, and should he have come back, was there a hint that team could have done something if he was back? This year, the thought is that they could make a run if he is healthy. Would he change his mind? Because his own words have kind of pinned him into a corner as far as, life after football and his thoughts on that. So I think most people would think he may have that thought. He may not want to try and come back.
Megatron tweets at us, Rondo finally got what he deserves. Will always believe he's the reason Doc Paul and KG left the Celtics.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as he got what he deserved. Listen, you said it and you were right. When he was playing in games against the Heat, when there were Hall of Famers on the court, he was the best player at times. And we've certainly seen him play extremely well like that, but he's a bit of a head case, and that's been out there as well.
Go New York, go New York, go, tweets at us. This Hawks team reminds me of the Pistons team that recently won the championship. No star, but a lot of good players. It's a good comparison, and that team was coached by Larry Brown, a really good coach who preached playing it, quote-unquote, the right way. And with Budenholzer, that's what they're doing right now with the sort of San Antonio of the East style. So they're good, and I gave you the record. They're 16-4 against the West. So this idea that Atlanta can't win the title this year is crazy. What's trending now with Mike and Mike is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. New improved taste, 10 great flavors. Have you tried 5-Hour Energy shots lately? All right, I mentioned that the number one free agent in basketball this summer might be coming out of Chicago. I'm not talking about Derrick Rose, of course. He's got $41 million left on his deal. I'm not talking about Jimmy Butler either. I'm talking about Coach Tibbs.
Yep.
I'm talking about the sort of whisper that we've been hearing for a long time now becoming a scream, and Chris Broussard talking about it on TV yesterday, that everyone's expectation is, no matter what happens, that Thibodeau is out of Chicago after this year.
The question is Tom Thibodeau. Everyone thinks he's gone. Even before the injury, the feeling around the league was this is his last year in Chicago. Obviously problems with the front office there. So they bring in another coach that for years it's been rumored that they want Fred Hoiberg, the Iowa State coach.
The mayor.
Yeah, so he could end up coaching there if indeed Tom Thibodeau leaves. Thibodeau will have a job like that.
Oh, you might have heard the snap from Broussard. I was watching when he said that like that.
Are you kidding how quickly he would be hired? But this has been thought about in Chicago for a while, that, the headbutting going on, and the type of coach that he is, that this may be coming down the road, which I'm sure if you're a Bulls fan, you're thinking, wait a minute, we've got a really good team. The one thing that stopped us has been our superstar keep getting hurt, but everybody talks about what a great coach we have. So if you're sitting there as a Bulls fan, I'm sure you're saying, what? Wait a minute. That's what's going to happen to our team. We lose our superstar and our chance to win titles. So maybe now we have to go a different route, but we may have to do it without our coach as well.
Yeah, they've had a problem there. I mean, all the years that Phil was there, they're winning championships, and every single year they were trying to run him out of town. Yep. So for whatever reason, that seems to be a pattern in Chicago over the last couple of decades. One way or another, he'll be the most sought after.
Holy smokes!
I think he's a genuinely great coach. There are very few real difference-making basketball coaches. That's probably an unfair thing for me to say, but there aren't too many guys that I think of in basketball and think you get that coach and it's immediately going to make your team better. It's so much about the players. Thibodeau strikes me as one of those few guys. People will be lining up.
I just love what he injects into a team. That attitude and how they play. And wherever he goes, get ready to play some defense.
And to watch some defense if you were a fan. Yeah. All right, I want to ask you a question.
Ask.
Now, there's one thing I know. I've said this before, that the one difference between Mike and me, we're celebrating our 15 years together. We're going to have a thing down at Disney next week, and whatever it'll be, and however long this thing winds up going on. You and I have already been teammates longer than you were ever teammates with anybody.
Absolutely right.
And you've done this show longer than you played the NFL.
I have. Absolutely have.
But I know that your epitaph someday, when I hope that it's many, many, many decades into the future,
right?
But whenever it is that you go, you'll say, I was a football player, and I hosted this talk show.
Yes.
And I respect that. I obviously will not. So you love football.
Yes, I do.
You love being a football player. But just how much? I've been reading a lot about what the athletes of today are doing to be at the top level of their sport. LeBron James talked a lot about it. Carmelo Anthony transforming their bodies. You could just see how much weight these guys have lost. And the most recent one is our friend Mark Teixeira,
right,
who hosted with us a couple of months ago. And he says he's in the best shape of his life, trying to come back, get himself healthy, and contribute to the Yankees this year. He worked with a Darien, Connecticut-based trainer named Ben Prentice, who works with a lot of hockey players during this offseason, on what Teixeira calls the no-fun diet. No gluten, no dairy, no sugar.
Ooh.
No sugar. Now, let me ask you this.
Gluten, dairy,
and sugar.
And sugar.
No gluten, no dairy, no sugar. Now, in Golik's average meal, there is gluten, dairy, and sugar. Those are 3 of the 4 food groups.
Listen, it's on the food pyramid.
The food pyramid, basically the base, is gluten, dairy, and sugar.
And sugar, that's exactly right.
And then they just sort of work their way up into little subgroups of gluten.
May not be the strongest foundation in the world.
The whole gluten thing, I know is all the rage now, and for people who have, what is the condition? My friend's son had it. Whatever it is, that you can't have any gluten.
Is it Crohn's?
No, it's not Crohn's. It's celiac disease, and that's where that started. I think that's where that started, and then people started figuring out there may be other nutritional benefits to taking gluten out of your diet. I don't know. I'm not in any way suggesting anyone should do it. I don't know anything about it.
I'm with you.
But no gluten, no dairy, no sugar.
Okay.
Right? There's no question you'd lose weight in a hurry.
Yes, you would.
If it took that, let's say for an entire off season, for you to play in the National Football League, do you believe you could have done it?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. No gluten, no dairy,
back when I was
no
dedicated?
sugar. Yes.
Yeah, I could.
At any time in your life. What did LeBron say he did? He didn't have a single carb for, what was it, like 30-something days? Could you do that? Mike, you can't go 30 seconds without a carb now. You can't walk past a room that has a candy dish and not stop in there and empty it. You don't just take one. Golik takes a fistful.
Here's one of the differences of these guys, and if I could be in that position. These guys are having everything prepared for them. These guys are basically having it put in front of them. These guys have chefs. These guys have all the meals prepared, which helps a lot. If it's left up to me and my decision, you're right. When I was playing with the Eagles and I'd go into the game, my wife would come with me. We would stop in the wives' lounge before I go in the locker room, and they'd have a spread. And it was one of the best powdered cream-filled donuts I ever had in my life. And it was right before I walked down into the game. 1 o'clock game, I'm walking down to the locker room at 11 o'clock with powder on my face.
Right. So that's gluten, sugar, and maybe dairy right away.
Oh, that's absolutely dairy.
You're getting a cheesesteak afterwards. That's definitely gluten, dairy, and sugar.
Let me tell you what makes it a little easier. You have to have the drive to do it. But if you have people preparing that for you, so that's all that's around you. That's the key.
I know, because Shannon Sharp, when he was here, told us that he travels with bison. So that's really something.
It is true. That really goes to a point. Would I enjoy it? Hell no. Hell no.
I would be willing to bet
would
you.
say that's NAH. Nah. Okay. That's what he said about coaching.
I would be willing to make a bet with you. In fact, let me take a brief break here.
Okay.
And I'll come back and I'll make a little challenge with you. I know your wife doesn't want you betting, but this one will not involve her in any way, except that she'll have to put up with your crankiness.
And as we make this bet, I'm going to need some clarity to some things first.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here with his Subway Fresh Take for the entire hour from Monday Night Football, Super Bowl winning coach Jon Gruden is here. We're playing nothing but your music all morning long. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I love Van Halen.
We know you love Van Halen, and we do, and we love playing all the rock. Are you blinders onto that, or are you really diverse in your music?
Well, I'm a little diverse. I like Kenny Chesney. Some of the new stuff is okay, but when you get to classic rock, it brings back great memories, and I really blow out the speakers in my car. The windows are shaking, especially a song like that. It's good stuff.
Mike and Mike, Jon Gruden is here. We got an hour to do all kinds of things. We'll start by talking about some of the things that came out of the Combine, because I think that's what people now are most looking forward to, your quarterback camps, which have become such a fabulous part of our coverage leading up to the draft. We get a chance to see you sit with the quarterbacks. And actually, it's fascinating to me. Danny Cannell was in here with me one day last week hosting. Golik was off. And he shared with me a story about when he was going through the process. I believe believe you were on the staff in Philadelphia then. And he told me that he went in and he met with you, and that you basically just gave him a bunch of verbiage and then asked him to just spit it back at you. Now, that's the kind of thing that someone like me, who is obviously just an observer of this, my question has always been, is there a difference between basic intelligence and football IQ? Which is to say, if you're Marcus Mariota, and you're just a basically intelligent person, if you sit and you study and you prepare and all that kind of stuff the way you might for a law school exam, can you learn football? Or is that something that just has to be within you to begin with?
It's a combination. You can learn football, especially if you're around a good coach. You stay in the same system for a while. Continuity, skill around you matters as well. But execution at the college level, a lot of it is simple execution. It's up at the line of scrimmage, no huddle, read the end, built-in bubble screen, do it again. Not a lot of complex, sophisticated execution going on in college now with these up-tempo, no-huddle offenses. So you got to get these young quarterbacks, many who are underclassmen, get them out of their comfort zone, start the training process of being a pro football player. As you know, it's a lot different than college.
I mean, is it as simple as saying they're asked to think much less in college, correct? Because they all just look to the sideline and wait to be told what to do, and then all of a sudden they have to think. And they have to think and learn a new language, correct?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these colleges never get in a huddle. They don't use substitutions from the sideline, and they run basically the same plays week in, week out at a warp speed. And in the NFL, sometimes you want to huddle, slow things down. You want to get this receiver the ball. You want to audible. You want to change plays. It takes time.
So we just, as Gruden said, we just finished the combine, and certainly you have been part of that and going to that. You see the head coaches there and GMs there, all looking at their different things of what they want to see. When you were there, what did you look at for a position? What things, because they're in their shorts and their T-shirt. You know, you have game film. Obviously, it's going to tell you the best story. They're in their shorts and their T-shirt. What did you look for in a combine out of a player?
I hated the combine. As a coach, just wanted the raw numbers, wanted the facts. How big is he? How fast is he? How high can he jump? Raw numbers. And does he pass the physical? And are there any things in his specimen? I don't want any positive tests, any surprises, and any real questions of character. We get a chance to address those for the first time. But really, it's an information gathering process. That's it. How do you ace the combine? You basically got to show up. These kids are being prepared for the questions that are going to be asked. They know the drills they're going to be running. They are in shorts. So unless they flunk the physical or they show up out of shape, they should do well here.
That's my basic feeling, again, just as an observer, with every position but one, right? How fast does he run? How high does he jump? Is this speed going to translate, to the next level? All that stuff, I get it, with receivers, with corners, with linebackers. Then you get to the position that we obviously spend 95% of our time talking about, with quarterbacks. If you were in the market for a quarterback, what specifically at the combine are you looking for in Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota to make the decision between the two of them?
Well, obviously, you want to get a feel for their aptitude, their football intelligence, their leadership. All those intangibles at that position are critical. You want to start addressing those there. And a lot of quarterback coaches can see if a guy can throw the ball just by watching the 35 or 40 attempts that he has. You get to see him under the center, taking drops that you're accustomed to seeing on Sunday. You can tell watching a guy hitting balls on the driving range who can hit the golf ball. And I think that first exposure, meeting them, seeing their intangibles and seeing them throw the football is eye-opening. And you get to compare guys with others right there at the combine.
So once you get to talk to a quarterback, get him on the grease board, whether it's putting up a play like Mariucci did with Jameis and flip it around and then talk and go back and he could put it back up and all the verbiage. And so after you learn stuff like that, like right now, could if you were running a team and you just had the information you had from game tape to the combine, could you say, I'm very comfortable with, I know which quarterback I'm going to pick right now. I don't need any more evaluation.
I feel like that.
Yeah.
I certainly do. I think your job as the coach is to make the quarterback successful. It's like Mike Holmgren told us in 1992, we made the trade for Brett Favre. We're going to make this kid successful because if he's successful, we'll be successful. If he isn't, we'll be out of here quick. And I think that's what's got to happen. Tampa Bay's got to pick their guy, whether it's Mariota or Winston or whoever it is, and they have to make him successful. And hopefully Dirk Cutter, the offensive coordinator, has assembled a staff that will allow this quarterback to come in, learn, and be a factor quickly.
Mike and Mike, John Gruden is here with his Subway Fresh Take. At Subway, you can make every morning the best morning ever with freshly made breakfast sandwiches. Subway, eat fresh. The other part of that, or the other potential part of that, is we've now seen the bar set for major quarterback trades, right? Washington, where your brother is now the coach, did this with St. Louis a couple of years ago. They mortgaged the farm to go get Robert Griffin III, and it's either going to work out ultimately or it isn't. But the point is, if you're Tampa and you're sitting on Jameis Winston, who some people are saying is the best prospect, or Todd McShay said he's, besides Luck, the best he's seen in 10 years, and someone's offering you, I don't even know, what could you get, 3 1s? I mean, whatever it is, the possibility to do a Herschel Walker-esque kind of deal, how seriously do you have to consider that?
I think Tampa's got to address the quarterback position, period. I mean, you're in the South with Drew Brees, you got Matt Ryan, you got Cam Newton. You just got rid of McCown. Josh Freeman's no longer there. If they don't address the quarterback position, they're going to continue to struggle. And this is their opportunity to pick the quarterback that fits their system and their vision of the future. They have to get it right.
But let me just, I hear you completely, but let me just throw a scenario at you here. If you're Lovie Smith and their offensive staff, and you like, maybe you don't love, but you like Bryce Petty, or Brett Hundley, or one of these other guys who figure to be available on the second round, or maybe you can trade, you get a ton of assets and you trade back into the end of the first round like Minnesota did last year for Teddy Bridgewater. And all of a sudden you have stockpiled all of these other assets and you still get a quarterback. I mean, how far does the separation have to be between Winston and that other guy that you're not even really seriously considering those phone calls?
Well, that's exciting. You have to weigh all that. I like Bryce Petty. He's got great arm talent. We'll get to him later, I'm sure. Yeah. But you better make sure you walk out of the draft with a quarterback that you know can shape our future around. And I think they're looking at Mariota and Winston carefully. I'd be shocked if they accepted any trade and didn't pick the guy they want.
I'd be stunned, because then you're talking about the assets that you picked up, but you're still addressing the quarterback position.
I hear you, but let me ask you this. Is if you draft Mariota, the sense I get, and I would defer to you on this, is you may not be drafting your quarterback for 2015, right? I mean, Winston, I think we all think this is the conventional wisdom. He steps in and he's your starter day one and he's ready to go. But the sense I get I feel like from most people, is that absent going to play for Chip Kelly in Philadelphia, that Marcus Mariota may not be ready to be your starting quarterback in 2015. Would you agree with that assessment?
No, I think that's a myth. I want to go back to Tampa, though. Tampa's had Bennett as a pass rusher. He didn't play well. Seattle plays pretty good for the Seahawks.
Yep.
LeGarrette Blount. They had Darrelle Revis. They've had a lot of good players that didn't play well enough in Tampa, and I think a lot of it has to do with the lack of quality quarterback play. They're not winning games. They can't keep these players. They can't understand why they're not playing great. They have to get the quarterback position right. I know this about Mariota. He played really good for Helfrich at Oregon without Chip Kelly. They averaged almost 50 points a game. He's 6'5". He ran 4.5. He has suddenness, quickness. He's a quick thinker, and I've seen him throw the ball in tight windows. If you don't like Marcus Mariota, you don't like human beings, Mike.
I like Mariota. I take Winston over Mariota as a quarterback right now. Here's the thought, and we always use the term checking the boxes. Mariota checks all the boxes off the field. On the field, then you can see and work with the things on the field. Jameis Winston checks all the boxes on the field, or most of them, but off the field there's issues. And my thought is, he is going to now tell you what you want to hear when you ask him about that. There's no way to really kind of zone in and be concrete on him saying, I know I made mistakes and I'm going to do better. Then it's up to you. Do you believe him? And he even said actions will speak louder than words, but how much of it is a sell job that you have to look through to say, am I really buying what I'm hearing about the off-the-field thing?
No, it's tough. You have to do your research. I'm sure they're talking to Jimbo Fisher, all the coaches, a lot of the players that played with Winston. They're going to try to make sure they do all their research, feel comfortable about making that pick. He's a dynamic kid. You don't go to Florida State and meet many people that don't love being around Winston. He is a polarizing player, though, for some. Some people can't agree on what he is off the field. I got a lot of confidence that he's learned some valuable lessons, and he knows he's going to be in the spotlight for the rest of his career. It's up to him to step up and do the right thing. Johnny Manziel didn't get it done, and that scares some people. Manziel, to me, let some people down last year without doing what he said he was going to do, and look where Cleveland is.
See, remember, I had said that when Johnny Manziel was having his talks, I said, he's going to tell everybody what they want to hear, but you're not going to know it until their actions speak. And we saw what Manziel's actions were, and you said the simplest thing in the world, but it's so true. It's up to them. They control this all. They have it right there. They have it right there for them, and it's amazing somehow they still blow it, but it is up to them. This is all going to be on Jameis Winston. He can control everything.
Mike and John Gruden, I don't think there's any question that Winston has separated himself. At least, again, the conventional wisdom is that Winston has separated himself and ultimately will go one, wherever it is. I want to go back to Mariota, though, because, again, I admire or respect your view on this more than anyone's. I hear from a lot of people, Trent Dilfer will talk about it, Danny Cannell will talk about it, that Marcus Mariota, when you look at the tape, he's making throws to guys he's throwing to his first option 70-something% of the time. No one does that in the NFL. He's throwing in windows that he'll never see in the National Football League, all that kind of stuff. And there were a lot of concerns about that. You sound like you were not as concerned about that.
Well, he's not the offensive coordinator, Mike. It's not his fault. What they do at Oregon is very unique. Now, that type of football is on its way to the NFL. You're seeing more and more no-huddle offenses. You see a lot of intermediate passes from 10 yards and in, which is a big part of Oregon. But when you watch the Eagles' offense, and you used to play for the Eagles, when you watch Philadelphia play offense, you see the Oregon Ducks. And I just want to tell you, the number one offense in football over the last 2 years is Philadelphia. So the system works. Mariota can play in that system, and somebody is going to see a 6'5" quarterback that has 4.5 speed. And this guy is quick. He's smart. He is the most humble, hardworking guy maybe in this draft. I want him on my team. I'll put my system in around him.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question. So now you're Tennessee, or you're the Jets, or you're some other team that isn't coached by Chip Kelly, and you're considering drafting Mariota. Do you have to then build an offense like that? Do you have to put together an offense? I remember when Tebow was coming on the draft, and all the talk. Remember Bob Greasy sitting right where you're sitting now, a Hall of Fame quarterback, saying, I would draft Tim Tebow and I would build an offense that suits what he does. And obviously, basically, no one in the NFL wanted to do it.
No.
Mariota is a whole different kind of animal here. But do you have to build to play that offense, play the style of offense that he is, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to draft Mariota, we're going to bring him in and teach him to play a conventional offense?
I think that's what good coaches do. They shape their offense around the strengths of their personnel, especially the quarterback. I think personally Marcus Mariota can play in any system. Just give him the playbook, put him in the individual drill period, train him. Give him a little time. He's not a senior. He's not a fifth-year senior. Train the kid, teach the kid, and you'll like what you see fast, because he's going to be relentless in his work ethic. Off the field, he's special, and he's going to stay after it, and he's got a lot of raw tools to work with.
So where do you start with him, Bryce Petty, anybody, Sean Mannion, the guys who are running the kid Grayson from Colorado State? That's more a pro-style offense, Garrett Grayson. But as Bill Parcells said on our show and on a lot of places, you only can take what college offers you. And you're right. Mariota and anybody running those type of offenses, that's what they run. That's what they're asked to run. So what's the first thing you have to do outside of, if you say you want to build a little bit around it, but you know that's not happening at a very fast pace in the NFL, building around that guy. So what do you have to do initially to help implement them into the NFL in that style?
I think it all starts with pass protection. These kids need to learn 5-man protection, 6-man protection, 7-man protections, and how these protections work against different defenses. How to pick up a blitz, how to throw the ball hot, when to audible, what to audible to. It's a lot to learn. You're not going to learn it all in 1 year, but they have not done a lot of this at the college level. When they get blitzed, some of them, they get crushed. They got to do a much better job recognizing pressure. When you see Rex Ryan and some of these NFL defensive systems that are coming your way, it takes a lot of preparation and understanding of how protections work. That's where all these guys need to learn quickly, or they won't be around very long. And I think that's where Mariota, Jameis Winston, Bryce Petty, they all need to excel quickly.
John Gruden, looking at tape and getting set to film the quarterback camps, which are always among the best, in my opinion, the best part of our coverage of the draft leading up to the draft, which receivers. We have a few extra weeks this year, and we'll see all these quarterbacks working with John. We'll take a moment here for Stamps.com, and then when we come back, I want to, 60 seconds from now, I'm looking at a picture, and I just want your recollections of the moment that this picture was taken with John Gruden in 1 minute on Mike and Mike after this word from Stamps.com. Go look, computers are designed to make running a business easier, including your mailing and your shipping. Just use Stamps.com to get 24-hour access to the post office right from your computer. No waiting in line, no hassle.
Yes, just use the computer and printer you already have, and you're going to get official U.S. postage for any letter and any package. Print the postage directly onto envelopes, labels, even plain paper, then just hand it to your mail carrier. No guesswork at all. Plus, Stamps.com is going to send you a digital scale that automatically calculates the exact postage you need for any class of mail. You're never going to have to go to the post office again. Right now, use our promo code Mike for the special offer, no risk trial. $110 bonus offer includes a digital scale, up to $55 of free postage. Go to Stamps.com. Before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, type in Mike. That's Stamps.com, enter Mike. I love this song.
Nothing but Gruden's Grooves with John Gruden in our studio this morning, presented by Progressive Insurance. He's here with his Subway Fresh Take. We'll remind you, if you ever miss anything on Mike and Mike, the Best of Mike and Mike podcast is available every day on ESPNRadio.com. We have great basketball guests coming up a little bit later in the show. And we'll remind you, Gruden's Grooves also available on Slacker and on the Slacker app, as John is programming classic rock music.
And go to any stadium in the country and you'll hear that song.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm looking at a photo. Before we'll get into some of the current NFL stuff now. Teams are making their cuts, big decisions getting made around the league as the league year starts soon, and then we'll get into free agency. But I'm looking at a photo of the 1992 Green Bay Packers coaching staff. Mike Holmgren is the head coach. John Gruden, you look like you're about 7 years old. You're standing at the top of the stairs in this picture. You were the wide receivers coach. Andy Reid was the tight ends coach. Dick Duran coached the defensive backs. Steve Mariucci coached the quarterbacks. Ray Rhodes was the defensive coordinator. When Mariucci left, Marty Morningweg replaced him. And when Reid got promoted, Mike Sherman replaced him. Wow. So you're talking about... what is that, 7, 8 guys who went on to become head coaches in the National Football League. What are your recollections of that staff and working for Mike Holmgren?
Well, that's the only time you'll ever see Holmgren wearing a short-sleeve shirt in Green Bay. It all started, really, Mike Holmgren coming from the 49ers. He brought Ray Rhodes and Sherm Lewis as his coordinators from San Francisco. And that system at that time was rolling. It was unbelievable. Bill Walsh, George Seifert, Eddie DeBartolo had built this program of incredible success, and they brought that to Green Bay. We made the trade for Brett Favre. That was the most memorable thing that happened in 1992. But meeting Andy Reid, Steve Mariucci, hired a bunch of young guys from college. I came from Pitt. Reid came from Missouri. Mariucci was at Cal, and he trained us. Mike Holmgren trained us just like he's training young quarterbacks, and then he got Favre, and I think the energy in that room every day was exciting. And there's not a lot to do in Green Bay but study football, so we were focused, we had a lot to prove, and we had a great young quarterback to work with.
That's an amazing group of guys there. So let me ask you from this standpoint, compared to a player. I'm sure as an assistant, even as a young assistant, you dream of one day becoming a head coach. Just like as a kid, I dream one day of being an NFL player. But then there's a point you get to in college. At some point, I really thought to myself, you know what? I really think I can play at the next level. I really think I can be an NFL player. At what point in your assistant coach life did it really click for you to say, you know what? I could be a head coach in this league?
When we started getting confidence by winning. That's when you get confident in yourself. You get confident. These plays work. I can teach these plays. And I was asked to study hard. Mike Holmgren had his finger on me. I was always in the office working, and he demanded that. He demanded effort from all of us, and I think that fast-tracked every single one of us young coaches into getting these opportunities. But I'll be honest, when I woke up in Philadelphia as the offensive coordinator and I was responsible for calling the plays, my heart was beating Kool-Aid, man. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility. I don't care how old you are. As soon as you start calling plays and managing an offense for the first time, that's pressure.
We we've gotten to know Holmgren a little bit over the years, and he's sort of this grandfatherly figure now. He's got his wife with him all the time. His grandkids are around him all the time. I can't. The stories you tell about Holmgren, sort of as a tough guy, it doesn't compute to the Mike Holmgren that I know now. But you're laughing as I say that.
Mike didn't yell at the players; he yelled at the coaches. So if the split was too wide, I was a receiver coach, and you try yelling at. He's not going to yell at Sterling Sharp. He yelled at me. So it was tough, and he's 6'10". I'm 5'7". I mean, it's like a towering green giant in his Green Bay Packer gear. Put a lot of pressure on us, but it was great. We had a lot of lunch meetings, and he wanted things done exactly the way he wanted them done, and that sheer vision, I think, helped all of us.
Give me one good story about working for Andy Reid. We've got to know Andy well, obviously. He's such a huge personality, obviously, all those years in Philly, now in Kansas City. How about working for him?
Me and Andy Reid, we used to try to get a play in the game plan, and we'd put the play on the board, and Mike would come in and say, throw that out. Whose play to throw it out? And Andy Reid was Mike Holmgren's pet. He was his teacher's pet. Andy always got plays in the game plan. He'd gloat, he'd walk around big time. I'd be in a tank. One day, we're playing Chicago, Thanksgiving Day. I got 3 plays in the game plan, and Mike called all 3 of them. 2 of them went for touchdowns. On the airplane, Holmgren called me up. He says, here, game ball. Gave me the game ball. And Andy Reid still today, I could just see him hunched over in his chair. I said, game ball, Reid. What do you think of that? We used to have great battles to try to, impress the head coach.
That's amazing. So you guys would basically keep a tally of your plays getting called.
Mariucci got a lot of plays in, and Andy had some plays, but they were 2- and 3-yard gains. When I hit the lottery in Chicago on Halloween night, that was the greatest night of my career as a coach.
I can't wait till we get Andy on that side.
John Gruden's in our studio for the hour. We will turn our attention to current NFL action. Again, free agency is right around the corner.
By the way, first email we got, oh my God, this guy sounds a lot like Frank Caliendo.
More with John Gruden in a moment on Mike and Mike. With us on Mike and Mike, number 1, Kentucky remains perfect. The best start in school history is now 28-0. Wildcats beat Mississippi State 74-56. Miami knocked off Florida State 81-77. Not so far away from John Gruden's home. How about this kid, Xavier Rattan? He did everything he could. John, did you hear about this kid? He scored 30 points in the final 4 minutes and 38 seconds last night. In one stretch, he scored 26 straight. He scored or assisted on Florida State's final 38 points, bringing his team from 18 down in the final 4.5. They wound up losing by 4, but that kid gave it everything he had. An unbelievable performance. And the Hawks beat the Mavs last night 104-87. No Rondo. He was suspended 1 game for conduct detrimental to the team. Our Sports Center brought to you by Exxon and Mobil.
You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com.
John Gruden, Monday Night Football in our studio here again. Gruden's Grooves available on Slacker and the Slacker app. The quarterback camps are coming up as we build up to the NFL draft. Just quickly, you were telling great stories about you when you were trying to get plays in. And
I think it's great. I never knew that.
Give me, what's one of those plays called? Just give me the name of a creative offensive NFL play.
Well, the big one that hit for me that night was red left, fake Fox 3, naked right, fullback slide, and then we went double wing right, 58 all-go zebra search, and Sterling Sharp ran the route just like Mark Clayton used to run it for the Dolphins. I can still remember these plays. God, I miss coaching.
But the verbiage for offense is unbelievable.
Golick doesn't remember. He one time said on our show that he had never played against Brett Favre, and then a listener produced a photo of him playing against Brett Favre. He doesn't remember that. You remember the name of a play
I used to be the signal guy, Mike. I would be the signal guy. In the old days, we didn't have these walkie-talkies that tell you the play. You're out in the huddle, you're Brett Favre. I'm signaling sprint right option. The next play, it's 2-jet Dino, Y, shallow cross. I can still remember the signals.
Oh, my God.
And then Homer would be yelling at me, give him the formation. So I'm running out on the field saying, Brown right, slot A right. But those were those days. Now this new technology
just talking to a microphone now, huh?
Hey, Mike, let's just run. Now they're going no huddle, so there is no verbiage. Just run up there, and everything is one word now. You call it Chucky, and that means the formation, the play, and the snap count. It's a lot simpler now, a lot faster, and that's how fans like it.
Is it better?
I don't think it's better, personally. I'm getting tired of the read options with the built-in bubble screens, the same plays over and over and over. Shotgun execution inside the 5-yard line is wearing on me a little bit, but it is fun. It's higher, pace football, and there's more scoring.
All right, John Gruden is here.
So good.
We'll do next. To me, it's just incredible. A, just that is the verbiage, and B, that you still remember those plays from 20 years ago. Again, Golick didn't remember he played against Brett Favre.
He wasn't Brett Favre then.
He was always Brett Favre. Next question brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts, better prices every day. Let's go through a bunch of stuff. Let's start with, are you breaking the bank for Ndamukong Suh? Reggie Bush was released by the Lions yesterday, and almost all the stories that I'm reading suggest that they need to get themselves cap ready to make a huge offer for Ndamukong Suh. Now, you've talked on our show a lot, John, about how teams give $100 million to a quarterback, and now the rest of their team suffers for it. Now, this isn't even a quarterback. So are you willing to break the bank for a great defensive tackle in the NFL in 2015?
Well, it worked out for us in Green Bay. At the time when we got Reggie White, he helped turn that team into a world champion. That type of player made the rest of the defensive line and that defense much better. I think Suh is that kind of player. I don't understand the salary cap today. When you have the fabric of a team the way it is, you got a $100 million quarterback, a $25 million defensive tackle, and everybody else makes $1 million. I just don't understand how the cap works today. I would struggle giving a defensive lineman that's 27 or 28 years old that kind of money, but that's why I'm sitting here with you guys.
And you lose, in that salary cap structure, you kind of lose a core of a team, do you not?
I think you do. If you're going to give Suh all that money, you're probably going to say goodbye to a couple other players that you'd like to keep. But sometimes you got to roll the dice. You got to go after the great player to make everybody around your team better and create some excitement in some of these buildings where they desperately need it.
Well, Chris Carter brought this up on our show this year, and he's not the only one, that in what we've lost in the NFL now is that veteran who makes that middle salary, because NFL teams are getting rid of the 29-year-old linebacker because they can sign 3 22-year-old linebackers for less money. And coming off what was a very difficult year in the National Football League, one of Chris's theories was that you're losing that veteran leadership, guys who teach the young guys how to be pros. Do you think that is a problem in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I don't like that at all. I remember when I was coaching, I liked having veterans that were drafted and developed right here in Tampa or Oakland. When you go as a broadcaster to Chicago, you look at the Bears, Jared Allen, Willie Young, their whole team comes from someplace else. And it's not just in Chicago, it's everywhere. Everybody wants to be a free agent, Mike. Everybody wants a 1-year contract because they can be a free agent the following year, and I don't like that. I like continuity. I think the fans relate to a team more than just individuals that are coming and going.
All right, you mentioned Cutler. The Bears, I believe the date is March 12th, have to make a decision on Jay Cutler that will not only bring him back as their quarterback this season, but will guarantee the majority of his salary in 2016. So you're John Fox, and you have to basically make a 2-year commitment to Jay Cutler with all the ups and downs that we've had with Cutler. Take me through that decision. What do you think they will do or should do?
Well, I think John Fox is going to look at the body of work. They're going to see that he didn't get it done really with Lovie Smith or Mark Trestman, and now I'm the next head coach. I think you need to give some other people an opportunity to play. I think some of these quarterbacks get too many chances. There's enough good players out there that deserve a chance to be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. I know he has talent, but I don't think he warrants that salary for sure. And I think Chicago needs to look at getting a different leader under center.
And I guess along with that, though, and I hear what you're saying, because I remember when people used to rip Romo and say the Cowboys need to go in another direction, our answer was always, where are you going to go? This free agent class of quarterbacks isn't lighting anybody up. So I get what you're saying about giving someone else a chance, but as you just mentioned, you have to excite your fan base. And is there anybody out there, and we started to go through some of the free agent quarterbacks, and I don't know if there's anybody out there that's going to say, okay, not only we have to excite our fan base, but with the most important position on the field. That can be difficult.
2 years ago, the Bears were on the brink of going to the playoffs because of Josh McCown's play. Josh McCown played great for Mark Trestman. He fit that system. He understood understood it. He looked like he was in rhythm. He won a lot of games just 2 years ago for the Bears. He's available. You can bring Josh McCown back, Jake Locker possibly. There's some quarterbacks out there that need a new place to go. We were in Super Bowl 37 with Brad Johnson. I think he was on his third team. Rich Gannon was on his fifth team. Steve Young never started until he was 30 years old. We live in a day where everything has to happen right now, or let's get him out of here. Some of these guys are going to prove to you that they can play. They just need a new setting.
It's a fascinating possibility, because if the Bears do move on from Cutler, maybe he goes back to Tennessee where he went to Vanderbilt and all of that. They have the number 2 pick. That puts that pick into play. So a lot of interesting stuff there. But talking about other players that might get cut, I'm hearing names: Brandon Marshall, Mike Wallace, Haloti Ngata, Tamba Hali. These are some of the names that are out there as guys who could become salary cap casualties coming up in the next couple of days. And then there's Marshawn Lynch. In your opinion, we had Shannon Sharp on the show. He said if they don't have Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson is not a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. How vital is Marshawn Lynch to Seattle's chances?
Oh, he is vital. I mean, that running game is unorthodox the way it's set up to start with. But when you have Russell Wilson handing the ball to Lynch this way and the threat of Wilson keeping it going the other way, you have two different dynamics. You got a monster back with the ball and another guy that might have it. That combination is lethal for Seattle. This is not a great offensive line. They don't have great receivers. They have a vicious running game, and the play action off of it is awesome. That's what I think they're great at. They need Lynch, certainly. I don't see anybody in Seattle that can pick up the slack for him.
Play action at the half-yard line might have been the way to go, huh?
Mike and Gruden's Grooves with John Gruden in our studio. It's a pleasure to have him here, really is, as we look forward to the NFL draft and Gruden's quarterback camp. Let me ask you this. When those guys walk in there, I mean, these are guys who have faced 120,000 screaming fans on a Saturday night primetime game, in Death Valley, LSU, whatever it is. But when they walk in to face you, what is that moment like? When that kid first walks in, shakes your hand, hello, Coach Gruden, and you're, hi, I'm John Gruden. What is that moment first like?
Well, it's exciting. I'm nervous, too. I get excited when I get a chance to meet somebody that I respect, that I've been studying behind these closed doors for a couple months. It's a lot of fun. I think they know, based on the 39 quarterbacks we've had in there, that we're trying to help them get 1% better. We put a lot of work into these tapes. It's too bad it just turns into a 30-minute show because they're there for about 7 or 8 hours. Yeah. But we're trying to help them get 1% better, learn something, and take it with you when you leave.
Yeah, anybody knows the preparation is so much more than what you see on TV. But come on. They're intimidated a little bit, aren't they?
I'm intimidated right now. Yeah. Just sitting here right now, I'm scared.
You know what's great, though, when you come to ESPN? Like, I'm from Tampa. I don't get up here very often. Mm-hmm. There's the film library back here, and that's where I'm going. I was in there last night looking around. I'll find some tapes of Mariota that he's never seen before. I'll find tapes of Winston and Hundley. I'll find pictures that they have never seen themselves. That's what they like. The footage that we have here at ESPN is unbelievable, and I go into the vault, get Joe Montana, I'll get some Dan Marino, intercut it with their play. That's what they really like to see.
It's fascinating to watch. Again, we're certainly looking forward to those. John getting ready to shoot those with several of the quarterbacks, and we'll be airing them starting in April. We'll pause here 10 seconds, let the rest of the country join us, and then we'll go rapid fashion through the questions you have for John Gruden. I want to run through, our listeners have been sending in questions all morning long for us. Let's just run through a whole bunch of them here. I love this. Who was the player in your coaching career who was the toughest to game plan for?
Besides me.
Yeah, outside of 90 on the Eagles. Who was the defensive player in the NFL who kept you up nights preparing for him?
Derrick Thomas. My first coaching job was with Oakland, and my first game was at Arrowhead. He had 5 sacks. We couldn't find him. He was all over the field, and he would be one guy that still gives me nightmares.
Another one, how far did it go in a draft room were you battling for a guy? How vicious can it get in there when you're fighting for a player?
I've been in some interesting draft fights. The first one was Mike Mamula in Philadelphia. We're looking at Joey Galloway. Man, I wanted Galloway in Philadelphia. That speed, Warren Sapp. I didn't even know who Mike Mamula was. I still don't know who Mike is.
He started this whole place to work out for the combine thing and kind of made his money that way.
Then we took Sebastian Janikowski, a kicker, in the first round, which had never been done before, and we got criticized for that, but he's still bombing field goals. But there were some arguments in the room on that day as well.
It is my opinion that in the National Football League, and I don't know if this is an ego thing or what it is, but people outthink themselves. They tend to overthink things, maybe because it's the one sport where there's so much more preparation than there is actual play, right? In baseball, you're playing a game every single day. You just don't have that much time to plan. In football, there's so much time that guys will talk themselves into Mike Mamula rather than Joey Galloway, who runs a 4.2. Instead, they're going to, pick a guy, as Mike's dad would have said. They put the bench press on the 50-yard line, and all of a sudden he's a football player.
That's what makes this a fun time of year. There's no perfect way of evaluating. I've seen completely different styles over the years, and it's easy to make a mistake. But when you're on the clock and that phone starts ringing, it can happen strangely in a hurry.
Mike Potter tweets, is there a Teddy Bridgewater in this draft?
I like Grayson. Garrett Grayson at Colorado State is interesting. I'll go back to Bryce Petty. I think he has the best pure arm talent in this draft. You'll see on Gruden's QB camp, this kid can really throw the ball.
Kid, too.
And he's a finisher. He's a kid that didn't transfer. He gray-shirted, then he red-shirted, then he backed up Robert Griffin, then he backed up another quarterback. He's 24 years old, physically, mentally ready to go, and this kid can throw it.
Well, he's a perfect, I'm sorry, but he's a perfect example of a guy that people will look at and they'll say, well, but he's running this offense, so he's throwing to wide-open receivers, and he's running plays real fast, that Baylor style, and so there'll be major questions. You like him, though.
I do like him, and I like the fact he went to the Senior Bowl. I like players that participate in the Senior Bowl. I like seniors. I like guys that go through the entire schedule of events at their university. This kid can play. He's different than Robert Griffin. Totally different as a quarterback. You'll see that when you start studying him.
You talked about, we were talking on the break when you were a grad assistant at Tennessee, so the recruiting from college to get college players. How about coaches when you're a coach for the NFL and free agency? How involved did you get in trying to, come on to my team? Did you get very involved in that?
Yeah, a little bit. I was a young guy when I got into the NFL, so Mike Holmgren, Ron Wolf, they would use us young coaches and our college backgrounds to try to help recruit some players, especially that come from Tennessee or places that we're familiar with.
All right, Mike and Mike, John Gruden is here, and then we have some of the interesting questions that take us a little bit out of your milieu. What is your favorite sport to watch besides football?
Boy, I like watching basketball.
Do you watch much?
College or
I
pro?
do. I like both college and pro. I'm more of a pro guy now because so many one and done in colleges. I can't stay up with who's where anymore. Certain coaches, Rick Pitino, I love watching Louisville play, love watching Duke play. But I'm a big Boston Celtic fan, and I'm hoping Danny Ainge and some of the trades that we've made here in the last couple of weeks help set up the future.
I like that. What is the best concert you've ever attended?
Oh, man, I've seen so many. I saw Bob Seger last week, and that was as good a concert as I've ever seen. If you like Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band at 69 years old, he is still crushing it, man. This guy's awesome. Where's Caliendo? Is he back here? Did I just say he's crushing it, man? I sounded like Frank.
Well, let me tell you what. You're giving him plenty of material for this, so no worries there.
I think people's vision of you, I must confess, including mine, is that you live your entire life basically in a dark room with a projector on, and you were just constantly watching film. What is the last movie you went to in the theater?
I can't say I can remember that. I don't like movies anymore. There's too much of this technical stuff. People are too much interested into the tech side of movies now instead of the content. I like the old movies.
For example, give me a movie that you like.
Well, you mentioned Rocky earlier. I love Rocky. I still rent Rocky. I like Dumb and Dumber. I do. Me and my kids watch that movie. We laugh at that. I'm not a big movie guy. I try. I can't sit still in a theater. Some guy's opening up popcorn behind me. There's a guy on his phone. People bother me in movies. I like to concentrate in my home.
So how about TV at home? Who was the coach you said when you brought up, what was it, Cheers? He had no idea what it was?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories like that.
Did you watch TV while you were coach? Did you have favorite TV shows?
No, my wife likes the show Friends. I like the old show Coach. Remember that show Coach?
Yeah.
I got the DVDs. I stick that in and watch it now. I don't like variety shows and all these things that today. I like watching a series. I grew up with the Partridge Family, the Brady Bunch, Bill Cosby, shows like that. I like Saturday Night Live. I like watching some of these late night guys, but I can't stay up as late as I used to.
I grew up with the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch also, and I have a difficult time picturing you watching the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch. I don't know why, but I do.
I always liked Marcia Brady. When I was a kid, I had a crush on her, and
kidding me?
It was a great show at that time in my life.
Right. Well, just yesterday I was bringing up when we were younger the old Farrah Fawcett posters.
Charlie's Angels.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a good show. A good show. That's a great episodes.
I feel like we're in a time warp here, doesn't it?
Oh, my goodness. All right, so, John, you're going to be up here at ESPN for the day. You're going to be looking for all different kinds of tapes and stuff like that to get ready for all these quarterbacks you're going to be putting through the drills. It is such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for spending an hour with us. Great to see you.
Thank you, guys. I enjoy you guys a lot.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
From the NBA on TNT and Turner Sports, Kenny Smith joins us. He's brought to us today as he's teaming up with the National Urban League Young Professionals and Coors Light to refresh basketball courts across the country. We'll get to that in a minute, Kenny. But first off, welcome. And we wanted to start with this because we were talking about it a lot this morning. Rajon Rondo is bringing the ball up court. Rick Carlisle is yelling out a play. Rondo seems to be ignoring him, and that seems to be the genesis of their fight. You were a point guard in the NBA a long time. Roughly, what percentage of the time in the NBA are coaches calling out plays from the sideline during the regular flow of the game? Forget about coming out of timeouts or whatever it may be. Are coaches usually telling the point guards what to do?
Well, yeah, I'd say they are. I wouldn't say that they're calling every play, but there's a percentage of times that you just look over to the right or to the left, and you're going to get a specific when you're looking at time and score. But typically you have that conversation as well before the game with your point guard. You're going to say, we're going to run this play 3 times out of every 10. I want it done. And I want the other play 3 times out of every 10. And then the rest you could kind of, you call and you figure out. So you have that conversation well before. But typically when a coach screams out a play, he wants it run.
So along those lines, then you probably see that situation with Carlisle and Rondo a little differently than obviously the average fan watching it, the confrontation. So in your mind, do you think that was something about just not listening to Carlisle or that particular play or something that had been brewing a while? What was kind of your thought on that as you saw it happen?
Well, for me, when I first saw it, I said, obviously this is not the first time he's not listening to what he's saying. And so, it became a frustration for a coach to do that. It couldn't have been the first time he's done it. And it just would be hard to believe that would get you that frustrated if it's the first time that he's done it. But overall, you still have the ability, if you're Rondo, to call the play and get what you want out of it. You don't have to particularly get what maybe he's looking for in it if you see something different. But to call a play, not call a play, and if you do it on a couple occasions, it does show a lack of respect. And I've had those kind of confrontations with coaches before, honestly, and I've always been wrong. Regardless of if the situation or my opinion was right, the way I handled it in that sense, if the way he did was wrong. And, that's something that you would definitely come back to the bench because the lack of authority, it starts to trickle down. You don't have authority for the coach. Then the players don't have authority. They don't listen to the point guard now because now Carlisle and him are going at it. So all of a sudden, you both are losing in this battle. So you always have to let the coach win that battle.
Mike and Mike Kenny, the Jet Smith from TNT, is with us. The other point guard story in the NBA, obviously, is just a terrible shame with the injury to Derrick Rose. As you look at that situation now, if you're in the front office there in Chicago, if you're a decision maker with that organization, in the big picture, are you proceeding as though you cannot count on Derrick Rose being the center of your organization anymore?
Well, I think they've always done that, honestly, since the first injury. That's why Nate Robinson was there. That's why Aaron Brooks is there. If you notice, those guys that they bring in as their backup, DJ Augustine, have started a lot of places that they've been. And and everyone that they bring in is a scorer. They don't bring in guys who run the show. They bring in guys who when Derrick Rose is not there, or even they come into the game, they can get 18 to 20 and you're not surprised by it. So I think they've always had that mentality. And now Aaron Brooks is going to get that opportunity to do what Nate Robinson and DJ Augustine has done and kind of, propel that team into a height that people weren't expecting.
And I certainly understand what you're saying about those backups coming in, but they're just that, backups coming in. Are we to the point in Chicago where we have to get past that and somebody else is going to run the show for Chicago?
Well, I don't think that anyone else would be able to run the show, because when he comes back, he is going to be better than that person, And even when, the way he was this year and the inconsistent shooting, he's still the top 10 point guard. So it's going to be difficult to get a guy in there that under the salary cap and under the restrictions that's going to be better than him, that's making about $2 million. I don't know where that guy is. So if he's out there, somebody's stupid right now for not having him on their team.
Listen to us poo-pooing $2 million. No, just $2 million.
Mike and Mike, Kenny the Jet. You've got a great one tonight on TNT. We have it on ESPN Radio, Cavs and Warriors. And since LeBron James came back from that little time he took away, he's been playing about as well as ever, and Cleveland has been the best team in basketball at 17-3. At this point, do they look like the team to beat to you?
Well, I would say the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers are in the West. I don't know how great they would be and their record would be. I don't know if they'd be able to pull that off. But the additions of Moskov and Smith and Shumpert, what it really did is it put everybody in their natural positions. So now LeBron doesn't have to do anything but be a great point forward. Kyrie Irving now just be a great scoring point guard. They don't have to do dual duties, and and now they've made them bigger with Moskov and being able to build the ability to clog up the lane somewhat. And Shumpert comes off the bench and JR comes in, and they can fill it up.
All right, let's forget basketball for a minute and just say, sitting on that set with Barkley and with Shaq, and what you guys do is just fantastic. I mean, so I wonder, how many times a show do you just look at Barkley and say, I can't believe that came out of your mouth?
You know what? A lot of times I feel like Rick Carlisle up there. They're not running the plays, man. Those three is not running the plays, man. And I'm trying to get this play run. It's a crucial time in the show, and he's not running the play, man.
I mean, there's no way you can have a rundown in front of you, right? There's no way you can have anything in front of you that tells you what you're supposed to do, because you never do it.
The only one who knows what's going on in terms of time is Ernie, and we plan it that way, honestly, because I don't really want to know what Charles is going to say. And one day he asked me, I think it was early in his career, so what is Kenny going to say? And I said, you'll find out when we start. and that was kind of the precedent that was set for the show, is that we don't know what each other's going to say. We don't have that. You talk for 30 seconds, he talks for 30, and so on. No. If you're saying something idiotic, you're going to get cut off. If you're saying something smart, you're going to get to talk longer. So it's just a different format for what we do.
It's fun to watch. Kenny Smith is with us this morning, teaming with the National Urban League Young Professionals and Coors Light to refresh basketball courts across the country. Kenny, tell us about the program.
Well, this is the second year. Last year we did 4 cities. Now we're up to 8. We're donating up to $25,000 through Coors, refurbishing basketball courts in those cities. And if you put the hashtag Full Court Refresh and over 21, it helps donate more into those different cities that you're coming from. So it's just a great program, because I think the basketball courts, to me, have always been the social place where people met, not just play basketball. So when those look great and feel great, your community feels great. So this is something I was happy to partner in with them. And last year we did 4, now we're up to 8. Next year, we're trying to do more.
It's a great program. All the details at MillerCoors.com. And it's always our pleasure to chat. Thank you, Kenny. Enjoyed it. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Kenny.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.